For centuries, scientists have been puzzled by one of the most common blood types on Earth. But what if I told you that the answer to its origin was hidden in our DNA all along, waiting to be discovered? The story of type O blood is not just a tale of genetics. It's the untold story of human survival, adaptation, and how our ancestors conquered a deadly world. Let me take you on a journey through time, through evolution, and through the very blood that runs through your veins. This story spans tens of thousands of years and reveals secrets locked in human DNA since before recorded history even began. We're going to uncover the truth about where you came from, what your blood type really means, and why type O blood is the most powerful genetic legacy of human survival. Imagine, standing at the dawn of humanity. Our ancestors are in Africa, adapting to a world filled with danger at every turn. Predators hunt them. Starvation threatens constantly. But something far more deadly than any animal lurks in the environment. Invisible pathogens that ravage populations. Malaria spreads like wildfire. Cholera devastates communities. Plague sweeps across regions. In this ancient world of constant biological warfare, survival is determined by a single thing: genetics. Those tiny mutations that happen to give one person an advantage over another become the difference between life and death. A child born with a genetic variant that offers protection against malaria survives when others fall ill. That child grows up. That child has children of their own. The genetic advantage gets passed forward. Over hundreds of generations, over thousands of years, this process accumulates. What starts as a rare mutation becomes increasingly common. What begins as an individual advantage becomes a population-wide genetic pattern. Fast forward to today. Over 7 billion people walk this planet. Type O blood is the most common blood type in the world. If you have type O blood, you're part of an incredibly vast genetic lineage stretching back through ancient times. But here's the truly fascinating part. The reason your blood type exists is directly connected to those ancient struggles for survival, those battles against disease and humanity's incredible journey out of Africa into the world. Let's return to where everything began. Africa, approximately 50,000 years ago. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, are thriving across the African continent. They've developed languages, created tools, established social structures, and demonstrated an incredible ability to adapt to their environment. Yet they remain vulnerable to an enemy they cannot see, cannot fight with weapons, and cannot escape: disease. The pathogens of Africa, particularly the parasite causing malaria, were relentless killers. For hundreds of thousands of years, natural selection worked silently in the background, constantly filtering out certain genetic variants while favoring others. This invisible force shaped human populations more powerfully than any predator or environmental challenge. It determined who lived and who died. It determined whose genes would be passed to future generations. This is where type O blood enters the epic story of human evolution. The ABO blood group system isn't merely an arbitrary classification that doctors use for blood transfusions. It's a window into human evolution. It's a living record of natural selection. Type O blood carries within it the genetic fingerprints of ancient survival, the molecular evidence of our ancestors' triumph over impossible odds. Scientists have discovered through examining ancient DNA that type O blood appears to have emerged in early human populations in Africa. But this emergence wasn't random or accidental. This was evolution at work. This was natural selection, the most powerful force in biology, shaping human genetics over vast stretches of time. The reason type O blood became so prevalent in Africa is absolutely stunning when you truly understand it. The malaria parasite, Plasmodium falciparum, which causes one of the deadliest forms of malaria, has significant difficulty attaching to and infecting cells from people with type O blood. Consider this scenario. A person with type O blood survives a malaria outbreak that kills people with other blood types. That person has children. Those children inherit type O blood. They too survive malaria outbreaks that claim their neighbors. Over hundreds of generations, over thousands of years, this genetic advantage accumulates exponentially. Type O blood becomes more and more common in populations where malaria is endemic. The genetics shift. The population changes. This is natural selection in action. This is evolution written in blood, visible in the genetic code, recorded in the DNA of every living person descended from those ancient African survivors. But here's where the story becomes even more extraordinary and remarkable. Approximately 70 to 100,000 years ago, something transformative happened. Small groups of humans began to leave Africa. They ventured north, across the Sinai Peninsula, into the Middle East, and eventually spread across the entire globe. These weren't organized. Expeditions with detailed maps and supplies. These were brave, curious groups of people exploring unknown territories, searching for food sources, and gradually discovering new worlds. As these human populations migrated out of Africa, they encountered entirely new environments, different climates, and new diseases they'd never experienced before. Here's the truly incredible part. Their blood types began to evolve and change in response to these new challenges. This wasn't a slow process that took million years. It happened relatively quickly in evolutionary terms, over thousands of years. Scientists have recently conducted groundbreaking research examining ancient DNA from 22 early Homo sapiens, who lived between 46,000 and 16,500 years ago. They studied 14 Neanderthals and one Denisovan Neanderthal hybrid. The ancient DNA came from sites scattered throughout Eurasia, from modern-day Germany to Siberia and China. What they discovered was absolutely revolutionary. These ancient genomes revealed that as humans migrated out of Africa and spread into Eurasia, they didn't just carry the same genetic material they'd always possessed. Their blood types actually adapted to new environmental pressures. New variations emerged in the population. New blood group markers appeared that weren't present in African populations. This wasn't magic or anything mysterious. It was the result of genetic mutation combined with natural selection acting on new populations and new environments. Think about it this way. When populations migrated to the Persian Plateau, a region nestled between the Zagros Mountains in modern-day Iran, archaeological evidence suggests they paused their for approximately 15,000 years. 15,000 years might sound impossibly long, but in evolutionary terms, it's actually a critical window. It's enough time for genetic variations to emerge, for new blood types to develop, and for natural selection to begin filtering which variants provide advantages. The diseases people faced in the Persian Plateau were different from those in Africa. Different pathogens meant different selective pressures. A blood type that provided protection against malaria might have offered no advantage against the diseases of the Middle East, but a different blood type variant might have offered protection against plagues or infections more common in that region. Over generations, the genetic composition of these populations shifted fundamentally. When these populations eventually continued their migration into Eurasia, they carried with them these newly evolved blood type variants. They spread into what is now Europe, Asia, and eventually across land bridges into the Americas. Each population, isolated from others by geography, continued to evolve independently. Each faced its own unique diseases and environmental challenges. Each population's blood types gradually shifted to reflect those specific challenges and selective pressures. This evolutionary process happened with other populations too. When humans eventually crossed from Siberia into Beringia, the land bridge that connected modern-day Russia to Alaska, they paused there as well. Archaeological and genetic evidence suggests they remained in this region for thousands of years before spreading into North and South America. During that time, their genetics began to diverge from their Asian relatives. Their blood types shift D again, creating new patterns and new variants. But type O blood, that ancestral blood type that emerged in Africa as a defense against malaria, didn't disappear during these migrations. It persisted. It spread around the world. Today, it remains the most common blood type globally, a living reminder of those ancient African origins, of survival against impossible odds, of ancestors who lived through plague and pestilence and passed their genes forward to us. Now, you might wonder why this matters. Why should you care about the origin of type O blood? The answer is far more profound than you might initially think. Your blood type isn't just a medical classification for transfusions. It's a genetic autobiography. It's a story written in proteins and antigens, a narrative of where your ancestors came from, what diseases they survived, and how they adapted to conquer the planet. Let's talk about what actually makes type O blood different from other blood types. Blood types in the ABO system are determined by specific antigens on the surface of red blood cells. Antigens are proteins and sugars that the immune system uses to identify cells as either self or foreign. People with type A blood have A antigens on their cells. People with type B blood have B antigens. People with type AB blood have both A and B antigens, but people with type O blood have neither A nor B antigens on their red blood cells. Instead, type O individuals possess only what scientists call the H antigen. This might sound like type O blood is somehow simpler or more primitive than other types, but that's actually a fundamental misconception. Type O blood isn't less than type A or B, it's simply different. And in many cases throughout human history, that difference provided a crucial survival advantage. The genetics behind type O blood is rooted in the ABO gene locus, located on chromosome 9 in the human genome. The ABO gene has 3 primary alleles, different versions of the gene that can be inherited from parents. These are designated as A, B, and O. When you inherit 2 O alleles, one from each parent, you have type O blood. When you inherit an A and an O, you have type A blood. When you inherit B and O, you have type B blood. Here's where it gets scientifically interesting. The O allele actually contains a single nucleotide deletion compared to the A and B alleles. It's missing just one letter in the genetic code, yet this tiny difference changes everything about how your blood functions. This single deletion removes the ability to produce either A or B antigens. The result is type O blood with neither antigen present. Scientists have discovered that type O blood confers significant advantages in specific disease environments. Beyond malaria protection, type O blood provides some resistance against cholera. Though it does increase susceptibility to other diseases in specific contexts, this isn't perfect protection. Nothing in evolution is perfect, but it's a genuine survival advantage nonetheless. Across populations where these diseases were endemic, type O blood would have been consistently selected for over countless generations. Recent peer-reviewed research from 2025 has confirmed what scientists have long suspected. A comprehensive systematic review examining cardiovascular disease and ABO blood groups in African populations and people of African descent found that type O blood remains the most common blood type among Africans and diaspora populations today. This isn't coincidence. This is the lasting echo of ancient selection pressures, genetics that were optimized for the African disease environment tens of thousands of years ago. The story doesn't end with Africa or disease resistance. When humans migrated out of Africa and encountered new environments, their blood types evolved in fascinating and complex ways. Scientists have now traced rare blood group variants that originated in Neanderthals and made their way into modern human populations through interbreeding over 65,000 years ago. One particularly rare variant, known as the RHD Daythort type 4 variant, originated in Neanderthals and can still be found in modern populations today. Think about that for a moment. Your blood might carry genetic material from Neanderthals, a different human species that went extinct tens of thousands of years ago. Your blood might contain the genetic legacy of interbreeding between two human species that happened tens of thousands of years ago. Every time you donate blood or receive a transfusion, you're participating in a system that only exists because of this ancient genetic history. Ancient genomes have revealed something else truly remarkable about human populations. Some of the oldest modern human remains ever decoded, including a 45,000-year-old. Individual from Siberia, known as Ust-Ishim, contained blood group variants that have completely disappeared from human populations today. These ancient genetic lineages simply didn't survive. They represent dead-end branches of human evolution, populations that didn't contribute to the genetic makeup of modern humans. Their blood types, adapted to their specific environment and time, weren't passed forward to future generations. Some populations thrived and spread, others went extinct. The ones that survived are the ones whose genetics were best suited to their environment, or the ones that were simply lucky enough to survive random events. This teaches us an important lesson about evolution. Not every adaptation survives. Not every genetic variant persists. The ones that remain today are the survivors. The story of blood type evolution is fundamentally a story about disease and survival. For millions of years, infectious disease was the primary selective pressure shaping human genetics. A virus or parasite would emerge or increase in frequency in a population. People with certain genetic variants would be more resistant or more susceptible. Those with resistant variants would survive, reproduce, and pass their genes to the next generation. Over hundreds and thousands of generations, this process would accumulate genetic changes, creating populations adapted to their specific disease environment. In Africa, where malaria has ravaged populations for millennia, type O blood became increasingly common. In Europe, where different diseases dominated, different blood type patterns emerged. In Asia, unique selective pressures created unique patterns. In the Americas, isolated from the disease environment of the old world for thousands of years, blood type frequencies developed independently. Today, we can see these patterns reflected in global blood type distributions. Type O is most common in Africa, South America, and parts of Scandinavia. Type A is more common in Northern and Central Europe and parts of Asia. Type B shows high frequencies in Central Asia and parts of Africa. Type AB is relatively rare globally. These patterns aren't random. They're the geographic imprint of ancient selective pressures written in the blood. Modern research has revealed that blood type is associated with susceptibility to various diseases beyond malaria. Type O blood shows some protection against certain strains of plague and provides resistance to some parasitic infections. Conversely, non-O blood types show higher resistance to cholera in some contexts. These associations continue to be studied, and researchers are working to understand the molecular mechanisms behind these protective effects. But here's something absolutely fascinating that researchers have only recently begun to understand. Your blood type might influence not just your susceptibility to infectious disease, but also your risk of certain other conditions. Studies have shown associations between blood type and cardiovascular risk, though the mechanisms behind these associations are still being investigated. Some associations might stem from the same genes that determine blood type, but also influence other aspects of immune function. The Rh factor, that plus or minus sign attached to your blood type, adds another layer of complexity to this evolutionary story. Rh negative blood is actually quite rare, occurring in only about 15% of the population globally. It's even rarer in African and Asian populations, but more common in European populations. This distribution pattern tells its own story about human migration and adaptation, about which populations carry which genetic variants. What's remarkable is that the Rh factor appeared to become medically important only in modern times with the advent of blood transfusions and pregnancy complications. An Rh negative mother carrying an Rh positive baby can develop antibodies against the baby's blood, causing hemolytic disease. This condition would have been unknown in ancient populations because transfusions didn't exist. Yet this incompatibility exists, written into our genetics, probably dating back to ancient human origins. Scientists have traced the genetic origins of both the ABO system and the Rh system to ancient human populations. The ABO system appears to have originated in early primates and has been maintained in virtually all human populations for hundreds of thousands of years. The fact that we still have all three major ABO variants in human populations today suggests that none provided such a decisive advantage that they eliminated the others. Instead, they coexisted, each offering different advantages in different disease environments and situations. This is called balanced polymorphism. Multiple variants persist because each has advantages and disadvantages depending on circumstances. Type O offers protection against malaria, but increased cholera susceptibility. Type A and B offer different protection patterns. Evolution maintained all three variants rather than selecting for one. When we look at molecular genetics, the actual DNA sequences, we can trace the evolutionary history of blood types. The O allele contains a specific single nucleotide deletion that distinguishes it from the A and B alleles. This deletion didn't appear randomly. It's the result of a specific mutation event that happened in the distant past and was retained because it provided selective advantages. When researchers sequence blood type genes from different populations in different time periods, they can actually see the evolutionary history written in changing frequencies. The implications of understanding blood type evolution extend far beyond academic interest. In modern medicine, this knowledge helps us understand why certain populations might have different disease susceptibilities and different medical needs. It helps us design better public health interventions. It helps us understand why certain drugs or treatments might be more effective in some populations than others. Sometimes, these differences correlate with blood type frequency patterns that reflect ancient selective pressures. Perhaps most profoundly, understanding the evolutionary history of blood type teaches us something essential about human genetics and human diversity. The genetic differences between populations aren't arbitrary or random. They're the result of ancient selective pressures, of diseases that shape populations differently, of migrations and isolation that created unique genetic patterns. When we understand blood type through this evolutionary lens, we gain perspective on human diversity itself. Type O blood, the most common blood type in the world, is a testament to the power of evolution, to the incredible adaptability of the human species, and to the long journey our ancestors took to populate the entire planet. Every time someone with type O blood donates blood and saves a life, they're participating in a medical practice that only exists because of this deep evolutionary history. Your blood type is your inheritance. It's a gift from ancestors who survived malaria in Africa, who crossed deserts, who climbed mountains, who adapted to new environments, who faced diseases we can barely imagine today. It's proof of their survival. It's evidence of their resilience. And it's a reminder that the human species is far more ancient, far more connected, and far more remarkable than we often appreciate in our modern world. The story of type O blood is the story of human survival written in protein antigens. It's the story of natural selection playing out over tens of thousands of years. It's the story of ancient humans adapting to their world, of populations diverging and evolving, of genetic innovations that allowed our species to conquer every environment on Earth, from tropical rainforests to frozen tundra. And when you understand your blood type, you understand more than just your medical classification. You understand your place in the human story. You understand that your body carries genetic messages from the distant past, adaptations that once meant the difference between life and death. You understand that you are the culmination of countless generations of survivors, of ancestors who faced impossible odds and prevailed. This is the true story of type O blood, not a hidden conspiracy or shocking revelation, but something even more profound. It's the story of human evolution itself, written in every drop of blood that flows through your veins, connecting you to ancestors across thousands of years and countless generations.